This is an online Catholic Bible study program produced by J.C. for me. Lesson 3, the Pentateuch. Notes prepared by J. Aloysius Ignatius, Father Gerard J. D. Silva and Father Trevor de Souza, OFM. Summary. In this lesson, you'll delve into the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. You'll learn about their authorship and discover who penned these ancient texts. Additionally, you'll gain insight into the time periods during which these books were written. 1. Introduction. The Pentateuch, also known as the Torah, comprises the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These texts serve as the theological cornerstone of the Bible, revealing the nature of God, humanity's fall, and the inception of God's redemption plan. The term Pentateuch is derived from the Greek words pent, 5, and teuchos, book, meaning 5 vessels or 5-volume book. In Hebrew, the word for Pentateuch is Torah, which translates to the law or instruction. Written almost entirely in Hebrew, these 5 books are the Bible's legal texts: Matthew chapter 5 verse 17, Luke chapter 24 verse 44, delivered to us by God through Moses. 2. The role of Moses. Moses is a central figure in these texts. Introduced as a baby in Exodus, he grows to become a great leader and lawgiver for the Israelites, God's chosen people. Through God's power, he liberates the Israelites from bondage in Egypt and delivers God's law to them. For 40 years, he guides them through the desert, facing numerous difficulties, trials, challenges, and even opposition from his own people. However, due to a single act of mistrust in God, Numbers chapter 20 verse 12, Moses is not permitted to enter the promised land. Instead, he is allowed to glimpse it from Mount Nebo in the land of Moab, Deuteronomy chapter 34 verse 6. Moses' significant influence over 4 of the 5 books naturally led to them being referred to as the books of Moses. 3. Moses as author. For centuries, right up until the 17th century, both Jewish and Christian traditions held that Moses was the author of the Pentateuch. Moses features prominently in these texts, and they often quote him. However, none of the books explicitly identify their author or claim to have been written by Moses. 4. The JEDP concept. In the 17th century AD, scholars began suggesting that the Pentateuch was composed using various identifiable sources. Literary analysis revealed that the books could not have been written by a single person in their current form due to variations in narrative style, repetitions, and contradictions. Instead, they likely originated from multiple sources, with the differences left intact. In 1883 AD, German scholar Julius Wellhausen introduced the Wellhausen hypothesis, also known as the documentary hypothesis. This theory proposes that 4 major sources contributed to the composition of the Pentateuch: the Yahwist, J, Elohist, E, Deuteronomist, D, and priestly, P, sources, collectively referred to as JEDP. 5. The J source. The first source Wellhausen identified in the Pentateuch is the J source, short for Yahwist, spelled Yahwist in German. This source is notable for using the divine name Yahweh when referring to God. It is believed to be responsible for the creation narrative found in Genesis chapter 2, which describes the creation of Adam and Eve. The J source was written around 950 BC in the southern kingdom of Judah. 6. The E source. The second source is the E source, short for Elohist. This source is identifiable by its use of the divine name Elohim. The E source was written around 850 BC in the northern kingdom of Israel. 7. The D source. The third source is the D source, representing the Deuteronomist. It's believed that the Deuteronomist authored the book of Deuteronomy, which contains much of the source material. This book repeats much of the legal content from earlier texts, acting as a second law. Additionally, it is thought that the historical books following Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, were either written by the Deuteronomist or by those closely associated with him, thus forming the Deuteronomic history. The D source was written around 600 BC in Jerusalem. 8. The P source. The fourth and final source is the P source, representing the priestly perspective. It provides the creation narrative in Genesis chapter 1, detailing the different days of creation. The priestly source is believed to reflect a priestly viewpoint, with much of its content focused on laws concerning priests, primarily found in the book of Leviticus. This source was written around 500 BC by Jewish priests during their exile in Babylon. 9. Consolidation of the four sources. Various editors, known as redactors, are believed to have combined the priestly, P, material with the J, E, and D sources to create the modern Pentateuch. Scholars designate these editors with the letter R. According to Wellhausen, the final redactor was the biblical scribe Ezra, who played a significant role in the rebuilding of Jerusalem at the end of the Babylonian exile. According to the documentary hypothesis, the book of Genesis is a blend of J, E, and P sources. In contrast, the books of Deuteronomy and Leviticus each primarily represent one source, with Deuteronomy aligning with the D source and Leviticus with the P source. The books of Exodus and Numbers exhibit less source mixing compared to Genesis. Literary scholars supporting the documentary hypothesis conclude that Moses was not the actual author of the Pentateuch, but rather the source of its information. According to this theory, the instructions God gave to Moses for the Israelites were initially passed down orally through generations before they were eventually documented in written form. The exact timeline of Moses's life is uncertain, but it is generally estimated to be between the 15th and 13th centuries BC. This period is close to the 10th century, when documentation began in the southern kingdom of Judah, allowing significant material to be passed down from Moses. 10. Conclusion. Despite being written over 3,000 years ago, the books of the Pentateuch provide readers with profound insights into God's divine purposes and plans, as well as an explanation of how sin entered the world. Through these texts, we witness God's response to sin, his relationship with humanity, and gain a deeper understanding of his character and nature. Thank you for viewing and listening to this lesson. Kindly place your feedback in the comments. Kindly subscribe and share. God bless you.